one of the biggest tricks for fighting well is just making some agreements before you fight. And that doesn't mean like, oh, we're about to get in a fight now. How are we going to do this? That doesn't work, because by the time you're getting in a fight, your nervous system is already riled. So this is about like, sometime when you're not fighting, sit down and say, how do we want to fight together? And I remember Tara and I, one day we were seeing some friends in Colorado, and they got in a fight. And they gave us a couple examples. The first one was they didn't hide their fight from us. They weren't going to go into the shame. They weren't going to say fighting was shameful. And they could do that because they weren't abusing each other, right? They weren't trying to control each other. They were just having a conflict. And so that was like quite a lovely thing to see in itself. But the secondary thing was, at some point in the fight, somebody said, wow, what was it exactly? It was like somebody said, oh yeah, hey, we agreed not to do that. We agreed not to use that word. And the other one was like, oh yeah, sorry. And then they continued with the conflict. And I was like, what the, Tara and I looked at each other like, what the fuck just happened? Like, that's not how you fight. And so we asked them about it after their fight ended, which was like in a relatively short period of time. And I said, what the hell was that? And they're like, oh, we have an agreement. We have our agreements on how we fight. And they literally had a piece of paper, which Tara and I never have done. And that would probably be a good idea to have them written down, because I think we forget them often. They said even at one point, and then Tara and I experimented with this. They said at one point our agreement was that whenever we got in a fight, we get naked. So like, if we're going to fight, we're going to be completely unclothed and be completely vulnerable. And they said it totally changed the way they fought. And it changed the way Tara and I fought too. And we don't do it to this day. They stopped doing it. But like, you can literally have agreements of like the words that you're not going to say, and you're not going to make threats. You're not going to threaten divorce. And to have those agreements. And the thing that I'll say about it is that if you do that, don't expect to live up to all of the agreements on your first fight, right? But also don't make it an excuse not to, it's our first fight, so I haven't. You really want to try to maintain the agreements, and you don't want to have a fight over the fact that you didn't maintain the agreements. So it's really important to be able to say, that's not our agreement, and be able to stop and say, okay, yeah, that's true. We agreed to this. And it's also important that those agreements are actually something that are creative and make you both feel good, and that you both actually agree to. So it's not like a cajoling, like, okay, so this is how we're going to fight, right? Good. Like, it's literally like, oh, when you do this, I can say this. And so Tara and I have many of those things. Like, so for instance, if I feel like in a rush and that's creating conflict, she knows, like, our rules are, she just says, I see how much you care. And it totally just makes me go soft, because I'm in a rush because of the way that I was raised, not because of what the fuck is going on right now, right? It's my trauma. It's not the real thing. And she knows that one thing that she's just acknowledging my care can totally disintegrate that rush for me, and disintegrate my like urge to try to control her to speed up. So it can be many kinds of agreements, like sentences that you say when somebody is in their trauma, or the agreement of, if somebody says, hey, I'm in my trauma, then you go over and you just touch them. Or when somebody's sad, one of our agreements is like, when somebody's crying, we don't try to stop them. We don't try to fix it. We just be with them in their tears. Or if somebody's angry and you feel like it's abuse, you say, hey, I need that to stop. Can you please go into a different room? And then you go into a different room and get angry and come back. Like, there's all sorts of agreements you can have, and they have to be yours. They have to be something not prescribed by me, but something that you and your partner sit down with and say, how do we want to fight? How do we want to be with each other? And your first set of agreements are not going to be great. You're going to learn some shit, then you're going to have another set of agreements. You're going to have another. So to go back to that set of agreements over and over again and say, this is how we want to fight together. This is how we want to have our conflict, because we're speaking our truth, because we're growing, because we're changing as human beings. We're going to have these fights, and this is how we want to do it so that they're most productive, so that we can get to growth quicker, so that we can love each other better. These are our agreements, and it's just so good to have them.